All right. Hi class. This is our first lecture that you should be taking notes on. And so just wanted to remind you to make sure that you're putting these into your notebook Cornell style. And we already discussed what that would look like. So in your first lecture notes, I wanted to just kind of go over what economics is about. Many of you asked what it is, this class, why do you have to take it, stuff like that, and we discussed that already. And so let's go ahead and get started. You can see there that economics is the study of how individuals, families, businesses, and societies use limited resources to fulfill their unlimited wants. And so that kind of brings about the discussion of what is a want versus a need. And so I want you to think about that. Do you really know the difference? Because in this class we're going to be looking at how different people deal with the fact that there's a limited amount of resources, but yet they want everything. And so what is a need and what is a want? That's what you need to be thinking about. So let's go ahead and have you make a T-chart, just a really small T-chart, and put needs at the top versus wants, maybe something like this, with needs here and wants on this side. And I want you to list these under the column that you believe they should go. Is food a need or a want? How about shelter? Clothes, your cell phone. That one usually gets students, arguing or debating what side that should be on. Now, as that says, what is considered a need or a want depends on your values. Okay, so we can discuss these in different ways and say, well, food, we need that for basic survival needs. But do you need something like Outback Steakhouse? Well, maybe that's a want, not really too sure. What about shelter? You kind of need that, especially in the Arizona desert, to stay alive, but do you need the house on the hill kind of thing? And so you can see that as we look at different things, understanding what a need is versus a want can become a little difficult. I don't know if you know any adults like this, and I do, where they get confused, where they think that something is really a need when most people would say, well, that's a want. You don't really need it for basic survival. And so that's how things get a little bit more tricky and complicated as life goes on, as your journey continues. So I would tell you to make sure that you always take care of the needs before the wants. And again, what is a need and a want depends on your set of values. We would generally say that a need is something basic for survival, versus a want is something that enhances the quality of life, but you don't need it to survive. So make sure that you always take care of your needs before your wants. In this class, as we talk about economics, studying how people, businesses, companies, the government deals with issues of limited resources, there's problems that we're going to see. And so as I told you, looking at that first thing that I taught you about nothing is free in life, the bottom line is in economics, it depends on your perspective. If you're thinking about a problem in a certain perspective or way, for example, like a teenager versus how your parents would see the problem or dilemma. And so it's really important to understand that, you have to get down to the basics of what is your perspective, how are you looking at the problem. And so in this class, I just kind of wanted to point this out, that in this class, you are going to be presented either individually or as a group with problems, economic problems. And you're going to have to solve them using different perspectives, not just your own perspective as a teenager at Yuma High School, even though that rocks. You're going to have to solve the problem in the perspective of a consumer, Okay, now that's a key vocabulary word from Chapter 1. You should know what that is. And basically, that is a person who buys or uses a product. You also will have to think about problems as a producer. This is a business owner, someone who makes or sells a product to others. You can see how perhaps just those two economic actors, their perspective may be totally different. And finally, I will have you look at problems on a governmental or a huge basis, thinking about how the government's going to solve a problem. All of these actors are important. We call them economic actors. And in the class, you're going to have to be able to, mature enough, to think of problems kind of not just in your own opinion, but in other ways. And through these economic actors, we can find solutions to really difficult problems. So be ready. What I want you to write down is just looking at what binds these economic actors together. Okay, so as we look at the consumer, the producer, and the government, we will look at what binds them together, which are products. And products are made either in two different ways. It can be goods or services, and again, those are key vocabulary words that you need to make sure you know the definition of. It will be, on your vocabulary quiz when you have that. And so goods and services are what we call products, and products are made out of stuff. Okay, and that's kind of the simple term for it, but in actuality, economists like to use not just the word stuff, we call that stuff resources. And depending on which book you look at, your book calls the resources factors of production. Some other textbooks call them productive resources. Again, this is the stuff we use to make goods and services. Okay, so what are the 5 factors of production listed in your book? You should be able to look those up. I'll give you a minute. All right, so you should have found that the first factor of production, and I'm not very good at writing on this thing, is land. Yay, land. Okay, and you should know what that is, because tomorrow when you get in class, we are going to be looking at drawing out some examples of these 5 different types of resources. Okay, so land, that's nature. You probably learned that in middle school as anything that comes from nature, a natural resource. And so nowadays, economists call that land. Number 2 is what we call capital. And I cannot write on this thing very well, so I'm going to stop. But the second one is capital. Capital resources are anything that man makes first, like rubber, plastic, okay, things like that, metal. Okay, man has to make that first, and then we use that to produce other products. A lot of times with capital resources, we see things like tools, right, machinery, stuff like that. Okay, the third factor of production is human resources, or what your book calls labor. Okay, and labor is simply a human exerting energy to produce a product. Okay, so we can go anywhere from a professional football player, okay, to a chef, to a teacher. Okay, humans exerting energy, that is a resource, and it's a very valuable resource. The fourth factor of production is entrepreneurship. Okay, that's a hard word. Try to spell that one, right? You may need to look in your book to do that. But entrepreneurship, probably you guys know already, is just a person willing to, take a chance to start a business. And a business ownership, small business ownership, is a very big thing in the United States, and we're going to get more in depth over entrepreneurship as the class continues on. But being able to start your own business, own your own products, create, being able to innovate, is something that's huge in the U.S. and that we definitely are capitalized on. Okay, and the last one, the last factor of production is technology. Okay, technology is something that makes production easier. Okay, can you think of some examples of technology? And you can think of anything from, historically, several years ago to, today's society. Technology is one of those that is a resource that industrialized nations really focus on because it helps us to improve production and get the most out of our resources. Because remember, economics is about limited amounts of resources and the fact that we have unlimited needs and wants. Okay, so those are the 5 factors of production. Make sure that you know about those because in tomorrow's class you will be asked to know about those, have some examples, and be able to really talk about those. Okay, so the last thing I want you to do in your notes today, in your summary box at the bottom, is I want you to write about which factor of production you believe is the best. Okay, so for example, if somebody had to give you a choice and say you can only have one resource, that's it. Okay, none other. Which one would you choose? Okay, and not only just tell me, oh, I would pick human resources or labor. I want you to tell me why. So in paragraph form, say the most important resource is, and list it. Okay, and then tell me why you believe that. Okay? All right, we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.